All right, so Donald had asked me to have a little conversation about pencils. I have just a simple pencil set like this, and it has HB, 2B, 4B, 6B, 7B, and 8B. I can't find my HB pencil at the second, but I have 2, 4, 6, 7, and 8 all together. Now, in reverse order here, but the smaller the number, the harder the lead is, and the bigger the number, the softer the lead is. So you can see with the softer pencils, I tend to go through them quite a bit faster. They don't last as long because more of the graphite is left behind than it is with the harder ones, and especially with the number 8. So just to kind of to answer Donald's question about when I would use which pencil, it is Chart 2B, 4B, 6B, 7B, and 8B. And then I first just go over this super lightly, the pencil barely touching the page with each pencil. And you can see that it has just left a very light, you can't hardly tell the difference between the here at the 2B and where the page is blank, just slightly, just a slight gray, and on until just a few more strokes on here, maybe with just the pencil weight itself. Here's just some medium pressure on the pencil, just a little bit harder pressure with the pencil, and this is basically going as hard as you can. And if you look carefully, you can kind of see ridges in the paper, and as I feel it is quite textured because I left behind prints onto the paper, and it comes through the backside in big bumps across the page. So in order to combat that, you use the darker leads. So as you can see with all those different types of, not leads, old school word, different types of graphite, you get to the 8B, and it is very dark in tone, and I didn't have to apply a ton of pressure to get this, although this is still, I was trying to push as hard as I could just to make this chart. You can see too that if you push on the 8B, it actually will leave graphite behind on your finger. So it's still a very porous and soft graphite that kind of just stays in its graphite form, which would make it not so great for writing with, as it would lift off the page super easy, it would erase, it would smudge, whereas the 2B isn't going to smudge super badly. So just to kind of show you this in a way that you could give it a try, but you can do this with any pencil, but we'll start by just making a circle. Now how can we make this circle appear more like a sphere? So I'm gonna pretend that there's a light shining on this circle from this direction. In the spot where the light is shining, it's going to leave basically a white reflective spot. Now I'm going to go around this spot here with my very dull 2B pencil. I'm just going to sharpen it up a little bit. And you can see I'm not holding this as if I was writing, which would be more like holding it closer to the tip of the pencil, but instead I'm going to go around the outside this way, holding the very back of the pencil so I can give more light strokes to this process. Now, part of this is just smudging things together. I often use smudge sticks, but I don't always have those around. You can use Kleenex or toilet paper, but that's a hot commodity right now, so we might not be using that as much. All right, so now I'm switching to 4B for kind of the next layer of this, away from the light. Again, my pencil is quite dull, but you can see even it doesn't take much to get to that tonal quality we had there already. So we just push just maybe a little harder, go over that a second time, and we have a darker tone already emerging. And again, we'll smudge. And I'm actually just overlapping on the spots here. Okay, overlap. Do a bit over it again because I don't feel like it's quite dark enough. And I'm trying to keep the idea that it is a sphere that I'm trying to create here. So I'm trying to go around it in a kind of a circular pattern as if it was a ball that I was drawing on. Okay. It actually, you can see it even more accurately in the camera than I can see it in real life, but I'm getting that darker, richer tone. And this process of smudging, so you can use, I have a Kleenex right here, so you can see my fingers getting a little bit dirty, but not terrible. It's actually in using the Kleenex, you can actually get a different shade of this tone from the graphite. I'll move to 6B. You can see that the graphite is darker. Again, you're going to come down. I'm going to add pencil, and I don't actually have to worry about covering everything at this point because when I smudge, it's going to just fill in those gaps. Oh, drop my Kleenex on the ground. Go around this. You see we almost at the same tone there with way less work, and that's really the reason why you are going to use darker, softer pencils, is when you want to get dark faster. Okay, I'll go over it here. And again, I'm kind of using what's left over on my finger to go into the other spots because the light would shine here and then it would start to get darker around the edges. Right. Now I'm going to skip the 7 and I'm going to go right to 8. And this would be the darkest spot here. And again, smudging that in. And you can see that this darker one will overtake your other areas very quickly and darken everything, whether you want it to or not. And this is actually one of the reasons why erasers are really important, because as the graphite darkens, the eraser can lighten things. So I'm going to go just around the edge of the circle with my eraser where it's bled over on the edge, like that. And to avoid my fingers smudging stuff on there, I brush it off. Okay. And then to complete the effect, I'm going to use my 8, but now I'm going to push real hard. Okay. And remember that it's going to cast a shadow away from that light source. And really, we would get pretty dark in here too. And going over layer by layer like that gets you an even darker tone. So when you're working in smaller areas, that's where these smudge sticks come into play. This is a smudge stick, and it is basically just rolled up paper. And I can do the same thing I was doing with that Kleenex here with the smudge stick. Now, that is kind of the basics as to why or how you can use different shade pencils to create realistic looking objects on paper. But when you consider for a minute, say you're going to look at a black and white picture. So here is a black and white picture of Shane Claiborne. Start to look at some of these tonal qualities. Okay, you got real light, but it's not the same white as the page, right? In some cases, maybe it is a little bit, but a lot of cases, it's not. It's darker. So you're going to have to actually go over the majority of a picture like this with a lightweight pencil, like a 2. And so they actually sell graphite sticks, which you can do large areas. A small amount of times these are graphite sticks. They make a huge mess, but that's what they're for, is covering a large area quickly. So if I was going to do a picture, say of Shane Claiborne here, I would probably cover the majority of my page with the graphite stick, with a 2B graphite stick, or 2H, which is even just softer, not compressed into a form that goes into a pencil. Although you can get H pencils as well. I don't use them. And then you start to work on, like, here's the drawing. So this is after hours and hours of work, and it's still not finished. You can see it's still not hit the hyper realistic stage, but we can see where I'm starting to work with the tones, right? So the darker the tone is for the darker spots on the picture. And I've found that the darker you get with things, the more realistic it starts to look. It's not the light, it's not the details, but it's actually into the darks that really start to capture what these things are. So that is pencil drawing, simple stuff. This is what I'm working on more recently. and it could use a lot more darkening. And this page, I started this freehand with a 2B pencil because that's all I had with me at the time, so I didn't cover my entire surface. So now I'm struggling to add details in spots where things need to be darkened up, because his face is now the same color as his shirt, which is problematic. His face needs to have much more tonal qualities to it. So now I'm kind of having to do double the amount of work because I have to darken and then adjust everything else to that same shade, as opposed to starting with a base level of light graphite with a 2B pencil. So if you're wanting to start, this is an object that you can pretty easily duplicate, and give it a try, Donald, or whoever else. But Donald's the one that asked me to do it. So later, dudes.